And indeed, you have to go back about a century ago. A guy named Arrhenius had figured out that additional CO2 would cause some heating of the Earth. Now, it turned out that all his numbers were wrong, but the principle remains that CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but it is a minor greenhouse gas that lies way behind water vapor, which lies way behind clouds. And furthermore, the thing that is not understood is that all of the carbon dioxide that goes into the atmosphere every year that is put up there by humans, because we burn coal, we burn oil, we burn natural gas, all that CO2 we put into the air is no more than about 3% of the CO2 that goes into the air. And the other 97% comes from totally natural sources.
Humans, plankton, animals?
Primarily the ocean. The warm ocean is an emitter of CO2. Cold oceans are an absorber. And historically, when the oceans have warmed up because of, let's say, orbital and solar effects, those have caused the Earth to warm up. The oceans have subsequently warmed up, and then the CO2 has followed suit and increased in the atmosphere.
Well, I mean, Al Gore in his film Earth on the Balance or An Inconvenient Truth, his book and the film, he shows the graph, but he lies and puts the CO2 in red underneath the green for the warming trend. But in all the studies from all the universities and different sciences and different divisions, it all shows the same data, that about 600 years after heating, you then get carbon dioxide increasing. Carbon dioxide goes up, and then heat goes up. Is that a correct statement?
You are correct, but there was another time lag, and that is because the data that everybody refers to were taken at Vostok, which is in fairly deep inland in Antarctica, where it is really very cold, and they pull up ice cores, but the data points in that graph were about 1,000 years apart. And it took more, later research to sort of correlate things deep in Antarctica with things nearer the shore, where the snow piles up faster, and you have higher resolution to determine that really the CO2 did come after the temperature changes. So that, let's say, 30, 40 years ago, it was quite reasonable to assume that possibly the CO2 might have come first, or that they changed simultaneously because you couldn't tell from the data. But newer data that is taken within the last 10 years really nail that down.
How do they get that? Is it a spectrometer, or how are they getting that data out of the ice?
Well, you drill a core, which people do in the ice. They do the same thing when they do mining. They just make a... Sure, I
understand pulling up the plug, but I mean, what tools are they using to get that data?
Okay, well, the first thing they do is they take part of this long cylinder of ice and they slice it into a thin slice, and they know how deep down this was, so they have some idea of the date, and then they basically put it into a vacuum system while it's still very cold.
Professor, doctor, stay right there. We're going to come right back to you after this quick break. Thanks for joining us.
So good.
Well, he's written quite a few books. One of them is A Primer on CO2 and Climate by Howard C. Hayden. This is a short segment. We're going to come back in the longer segment, finish up with him, and then take a few of your calls and recap some top stories, get to a few things I haven't covered yet. Look, I've studied history. I've studied the different climate changes. We know for 500 years they've been keeping pretty good records in places like England, really 300. But we know that the Earth's changing all the time. The solar system's changing all the time. The moons of Saturn and Jupiter that were ice are melting. Up until just a few months ago, now the sun just cooled off, according to NASA and 3 other institutions that gauge how much energy it's putting off. Can you elaborate on that and then get back into the ice cores, sir?
Sure. Well, let's. The thing, just to finish up about the ice cores, what they do is they just heat the ice core up, or slice the ice core up, and then they measure the gas that's in it, and they can tell how much CO2 is there. But the sun has varied quite a bit over a period of time, and the Earth's climate has varied a whole lot. Well, excuse me here just a minute here. The glaciers, for example, people talk about the fact that they're receding. Well, they have been receding quite steadily since about 1750, which is a long time before we started using fossil fuels.
Now, weren't they receding for the last 12,000 years since the end of the last ice age? I mean, there were glaciers into North Texas. I mean.
But yeah. Well, there's a long time. It was about 18,000 years ago when we were in the depths of the last ice age. But then we went through the Little Ice Age. In other words, things warmed up, and in the medieval warm period, which some people denied the existence of, things were really quite jolly. We had nice warm weather and so forth, and then they cooled off in the Little Ice Age, and that was basically coincident with the cooling of the sun, and now it's begun to warm up, and the Little Ice Age ended somewhere around 1750.
Now, you're one of the big experts on this, but I've interviewed literally probably 50 people on this subject. I've seen the great documentary they just put out in England, debunking.
Are we still there?
Wes?
Okay,
sir. Yeah, we are back here. I'm in Texas, they're in Minnesota, and we're now able to get you back on. Are you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'm in Texas, they're in Minnesota, and we're putting in new lines today, so I think that's may have been what just happened. I'm trying to understand here, though. I mean, if the science is so simple, how were they able to then engage in this hoax, and why did they decide to push this hoax?
Well, I'm not too good on human motivations. I don't really understand human motivations, except some people are really driven by money. The thing that people are looking at is basically computer programs. They write computer programs, and they've actually got gloom and doom built into them. For example, there was a recent paper, and I can't give you the exact details on this thing, but it was published, and what it described was a positive feedback system whereby if we heated up the Earth a little bit by carbon dioxide, then that would kick in more water vapor into the air, and they heat up the Earth a whole lot more, and we're heading for hell in a handbasket and so forth. And so the one chap who is really quite up on this thing studied that, and he took part of their computer program and just threw some random numbers in, and it showed that their program was guaranteeing of positive feedback. There was something wrong with their computer program. So he wrote a paper and sent it to the journal that had published that particular article. And they sent it on to the author, and the good news is that the author said, "Oh my gosh, you are right." So anyway, all of these scenarios about global warming are played out in people's computers, not in reality. That's the thing to be remembered.
Absolutely. Stay there. And I saw in some of the reports they would enter into the computer that it was the CO2 that supposedly had this effect and not the sun, and there would be two different responses from what reality would have shown.